My name is Brooke Mitchell, 29, and the fluorescent lights blur above me as orderlies rush my gurney through sterile hospital corridors. Just hours ago, I was standing in the Apex marketing conference room, pointer in hand, when the floor seemed to tilt beneath me. Papers scattered, voices echoed, and then darkness. Months of 18-hour days, skipped meals, and ignored migraines finally caught up with me. Now, a nurse holds my phone, scrolling through emergency contacts. My parents should be answering any minute now. Before I tell you how my life unraveled that day, where are you watching from? Hit that like button and subscribe to join me on this journey through betrayal, healing, and finding my true worth. The morning of my collapse started like any other. I was up at 4:30 a.m., firing off emails before my Keurig had finished brewing my first cup of coffee. My downtown Chicago condo, though spacious and modern, felt more like an expensive hotel room than a home. Most days, I only used the bedroom and kitchen island. The pristine living room furniture was for show, for the rare occasions when I hosted networking events to impress clients and colleagues. By 6 a.m., I was already on my second cup of coffee and heading to the Apex marketing office. The security guard barely looked up as I badged in. He was used to seeing me arrive before sunrise. "Another early one, Ms. Mitchell?" he asked, the same question he posed nearly every morning. "Big presentation today, Carl," I replied, already scrolling through my phone. Apex occupied 3 gleaming floors in a skyscraper overlooking the Chicago River. As the youngest senior account executive in company history, I'd earned the corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows. Not that I had much time to enjoy the view. My glass-walled domain had become both sanctuary and prison, the place where I regularly pulled 16-hour days that stretched into 80-plus-hour work weeks. My assistant Jenna would arrive at 8:00 a.m. with my usual breakfast smoothie that I'd likely forget to drink until it reached room temperature. By then, I'd already have revised the presentation slides twice and rehearsed my pitch 5 times. Curtis Fleming, our CEO, expected nothing less than perfection, especially for the Hartman Luxury Brands account, an $11 million deal that could make or break our fiscal year. "You look like hell," remarked Allison Thomas, my closest friend at Apex, leaning against my doorframe around 7:30 a.m. She was one of the few people who could speak to me with complete honesty. "Thanks for the vote of confidence," I muttered, not looking up from my laptop. "No, I'm serious, Brooke. When was the last time you slept more than 4 hours? Or ate something that didn't come in a wrapper or cardboard box?" Allison crossed her arms, her brow furrowed with genuine concern. I waved her off. "I'll sleep this weekend." "That's what you said last weekend, but we both know you came in on Sunday to prepare for today." She wasn't wrong. For the past 3 months, I'd been operating on caffeine, determination, and the deep-seated fear of failure that had been instilled in me since childhood. Growing up in the affluent North Shore suburbs of Chicago, I was raised with crystal-clear expectations. My parents, Karen and Philip Mitchell, were fixtures in Chicago's social elite. Dad ran a successful investment firm while Mom chaired 3 prominent charity boards. Their mantra was simple: excellence isn't achieved, it's expected. From the moment I could understand language, I was groomed to excel. Piano lessons at age 4, French tutoring by 6, competitive swimming by 8. B-plus grades were met with concerned discussions about reaching my potential. Second-place finishes in swim meets warranted additional training sessions. There was no room for mediocrity in the Mitchell household. My younger sister Haley was a different story altogether. 5 years my junior, she seemed impervious to our parents' pressure from the start. While I dutifully practiced piano for hours, Haley would disappear to draw or read in hidden corners of our sprawling house. When I joined debate club and student council to build my college application, Haley joined theater and spent weekends volunteering at an animal shelter. "Why Can't You Be More Like Your Sister" became the soundtrack of Haley's adolescence. Each of my achievements, valedictorian, Northwestern University full scholarship, summer internship at a prestigious marketing firm, became weapons our parents wielded against her. By the time Haley graduated high school, the rift between us was cavernous. She chose to attend college in California, as far from our parents as possible without leaving the continental United States. Our communication dwindled to obligatory holiday calls and the occasional text message on birthdays. Meanwhile, I continued on my predetermined path to success. After graduating summa cum laude, I landed an entry-level position at Apex Marketing and dedicated myself to climbing the corporate ladder with single-minded focus. My personal life was sacrificed at the altar of professional achievement. Relationships were brief and utilitarian. Friendships existed primarily within office walls, and my health became an inconvenience to be managed with whatever quick fix would keep me functioning. The warning signs had been accumulating for months before my collapse. Persistent headaches that intensified under the office fluorescent lights. Occasional dizzy spells when I stood too quickly. Heart palpitations I attributed to my excessive caffeine consumption. A general practitioner I saw, at Allison's insistence, had recommended stress management techniques and referred me to a cardiologist, an appointment I repeatedly rescheduled until they stopped calling. The morning of my presentation, I'd skipped breakfast entirely and was on my 4th cup of coffee by 10 a.m. The conference room was packed with executives, including Curtis, whose perpetual frown deepened as he checked his watch. "Let's see if all this preparation was worth delaying the Westridge campaign," he said as I connected my laptop to the projector. The pressure was immense, but I was used to performing under scrutiny. As I launched into my carefully rehearsed pitch, I felt a strange lightness in my limbs, a slight tunneling of my vision. I pushed through, attributing it to nerves and lack of food. Halfway through explaining our marketing strategy for Hartman's new luxury watch collection, the room began to spin. The faces of my colleagues blurred together. I reached for the edge of the table to steady myself, but my fingers grasped only air. The last thing I remember is Curtis rising from his chair, his irritation transforming to alarm, and Jessica from Human Resources lunging forward as my knees buckled beneath me. Then, darkness. The harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital ceiling were the first things I registered when consciousness returned. A steady beeping sound accompanied the dull throb in my head, and a plastic oxygen cannula irritated my nostrils. My mouth felt desert dry, and when I tried to swallow, the motion triggered a fit of coughing. "She's awake," announced a voice to my right. A nurse with kind eyes and a nameplate reading Sandra appeared in my field of vision, adjusting something on the force stand beside my bed. "What happened?" I croaked, my voice barely audible. "You collapsed during a meeting," Sandra explained, offering a small cup of water with a straw. "Your colleagues called 911. You've been in and out of consciousness for a few hours now." Fragments of memory returned. The important presentation, Curtis's stern face, the room tilting sideways, and then nothing. The Hartman presentation, I gasped, attempting to sit up. The sudden movement sent a wave of dizziness crashing over me, and Sandra gently pressed me back against the pillows. "The only thing you need to worry about right now is resting," she admonished. "Your coworker, Allison, I believe, brought your personal items." She gestured toward a small clear bag containing my phone, wallet, and ID badge. "I need to call work," I insisted, reaching weakly for the bag. Sandra frowned. "The doctor will be in shortly to discuss your condition. After that, we can talk about phone calls." As if summoned by her words, a tall man in a white coat entered the room. His ID badge read, Dr. Noah Peterson. "Ms. Mitchell, I'm Dr. Peterson." "How are you feeling?" he asked, picking up the chart at the foot of my bed. "I'm fine," I responded automatically. "Just a little tired." "When can I leave?" "Dr." Peterson raised an eyebrow. "You're not fine, Ms. Mitchell. Your body is sending you some very serious warning signals that you've been ignoring for too long." He pulled up a rolling stool and sat beside the bed. "Your preliminary tests show severe dehydration, electrolyte imbalance, and extreme exhaustion. Your blood pressure was dangerously high when you were admitted, and we're still working to stabilize it. Additionally, your heart showed some irregular patterns on the EKG that concern me." The clinical assessment of my condition should have alarmed me, but all I could think about was the presentation I hadn't finished and the emails piling up unanswered. "I have excellent insurance," I said. Can you just prescribe whatever I need so I can get back to work? I have deadlines that can't wait. Dr. Peterson's expression grew stern. Miss Mitchell, you're not understanding the gravity of your situation. Your body is shutting down. If you continue at this pace, you risk permanent damage to your heart and other organs. What you need isn't a prescription. It's a complete lifestyle overhaul. His words finally penetrated my work-obsessed brain, and a tendril of fear curled through me. Am I going to be okay? With proper care and significant changes, yes. But we need to run more tests to rule out any underlying conditions. We've been trying to reach your emergency contacts for consent forms and medical history. A new wave of anxiety washed over me. My parents? Did you reach them? Sandra exchanged a glance with Dr. Peterson. We've made several attempts to reach both contacts listed in your phone, but haven't received a response yet. Your colleague Allison has been in the waiting room, but hospital policy requires family for certain decisions. Of course they hadn't answered. Karen and Philip Mitchell never answered calls from unknown numbers, and they were likely at the Henderson Charity Gala today, an annual event where Chicago's elite gathered to be seen donating large sums to whatever cause was fashionable that year. Keep trying, I said, fighting to keep the disappointment from my voice. They're probably just busy. Important charity event today. Dr. Peterson nodded. In the meantime, we need to discuss your immediate care plan. I want to keep you overnight for observation and additional tests tomorrow morning. That's not possible, I protested. I have meetings tomorrow. Critical client interactions. What's not possible is you returning to work in this condition, he countered firmly. Your body has given you a warning. Next time, it might not be so forgiving. After Dr. Peterson left, Sandra helped me to the bathroom, where I caught my reflection in the mirror. The stranger looking back at me was pale with dark circles under her eyes, her cheekbones too sharp, her complexion sallow. When had I become this ghost of myself? Back in bed, I finally convinced Sandra to give me my phone. The screen showed dozens of notifications, most from work, none from my parents. I called my mother first, then my father. Both went straight to voicemail. I left careful messages, downplaying the situation while making it clear I was in the hospital. Next, I texted Allison, who appeared in my doorway within minutes. Thank God, she breathed, rushing to my bedside. You scared the hell out of everyone. What happened after complete chaos. You just crumpled to the floor mid-sentence. Jessica caught you before your head hit the ground, thankfully. Curtis actually looked human for about 30 seconds before he started worrying about the Hartman account. I winced. He's probably furious. Forget Curtis, Allison said, taking my hand. The paramedics said this could have been much worse. They mentioned possible stroke risk with your blood pressure so high. The weight of my situation began to sink in, along with the realization that hours had passed with no word from my parents. I checked my phone again, nothing. They're still trying to reach your parents, Allison noted, watching me check my phone. No luck. I shook my head. They're at the Henderson Gala. Probably have their phones off. For 6 hours? Allison raised an eyebrow. Look, I don't want to overstep, but maybe there's someone else you could call? The nurse mentioned they need family here. There's no one else, I said automatically, then paused. There was someone else, technically. But Haley and I had barely spoken in years, and the thought of calling her now, like this, made my stomach twist with a complicated mix of pride and regret. Allison seemed to read my thoughts. What about your sister? Haley, right? We're not exactly close, I admitted. I haven't seen her in over 2 years. But she's family, Allison pressed gently. And from what you've told me, she's the only family member who might actually prioritize your health over appearances. The truth in Allison's words stung. After several more unanswered calls to my parents and increasing pressure from the hospital staff who needed family authorization for additional tests, I finally relented. With trembling fingers, I pulled up Haley's contact information, a number I hadn't dialed in over a year. Taking a deep breath, I pressed call, unsure whether to hope she would answer or send me to voicemail like our parents had. To my surprise, she picked up on the third ring. Brooke. Her voice held clear confusion. Is everything okay? The simple question, asked with genuine concern, broke something inside me. For the first time since collapsing, I felt tears spring to my eyes. "Actually," I said, my voice cracking slightly, "I could really use your help." The hospital room door opened just as the night shift nurse was checking my vitals. I looked up, expecting to see Dr. Peterson or perhaps Allison returning with the green tea she'd promised to smuggle in. Instead, a young woman with familiar blue eyes and unfamiliar purple-tipped hair stood in the doorway, slightly out of breath. "Haley?" I hardly recognized my own sister. Gone was the awkward teenager I remembered, replaced by a confident-looking woman in paint-splattered jeans and a vintage denim jacket covered in artistic pins and patches. "Hey," she said simply, hovering uncertainly at the threshold. "Can I come in?" The nurse glanced between us. "Are you family?" "I'm her sister," Haley confirmed, stepping fully into the room. "Thank goodness," the nurse sighed. "We've been trying to reach family all day. I'll let Dr. Peterson know you're here." She exited, leaving us alone in the sterile room with only the steady beep of monitors to break the silence. Haley approached my bed cautiously, as if I might disappear if she moved too quickly. Up close, I could see the shadows of exhaustion under her eyes. "You came," I said, stating the obvious, unable to formulate a more coherent thought. "Of course I came. You're in the hospital." She set down a worn leather backpack and perched on the edge of the visitor's chair. "What happened?" "On the phone you just said you collapsed." I gave her the abbreviated version, the presentation, the dizziness, waking up in the ambulance. As I spoke, I noticed her eyes scanning the room, likely noting the absence of flowers, cards, or any evidence that someone had been there before her. "Where are Mom and Dad?" she finally asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "They haven't answered their phones," I replied, attempting to sound casual. "They're at the Henderson Gala today." Haley's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "I called them on my way here." "You did? Did they answer?" I couldn't keep the hopeful note from my voice. "Yeah, they answered." She picked at a loose thread on her jacket. "Mom said they got your messages, but couldn't leave the gala because Dad was receiving some leadership award. She said they'd try to come by tomorrow if their schedule allows." The words landed like a physical blow. "Oh." She asked if it was truly serious or if you were just overworked. Haley's tone was carefully neutral, but I could see the anger simmering beneath her composed exterior. "I told her you were hooked up to cardiac monitors in a hospital bed. She said you've always had a flair for drama." A lifetime of making excuses for my parents rose automatically to my lips. "They're just busy. The Henderson Gala is a big deal for Dad's business connections." "Stop it, Brooke." Haley's voice was quiet but firm. "Just stop. You're lying in a hospital bed and they couldn't be bothered to leave a party. There's no excuse for that." "They'll come tomorrow," I insisted weakly. "Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But that doesn't change the fact that they chose a charity gala over their daughter in the emergency room." She leaned forward, her gaze intense. "When are you going to stop defending them?" Before I could respond, Dr. Peterson entered the room, clipboard in hand. He introduced himself to Haley and explained my condition in more detail than he had to me: severe exhaustion, dangerously high blood pressure, irregular heart rhythms, and signs of potential stress cardiomyopathy, sometimes called broken heart syndrome. "Your sister needs complete rest, significant lifestyle changes, and follow-up with a cardiologist," he concluded. "We'd like to keep her another day for observation and additional tests, but she's been rather insistent about leaving." "I have responsibilities," I interjected. "People counting on me." "The only person you need to be responsible for right now is yourself, dear," Peterson countered. "But hospital policy does allow for discharge if a family member can ensure proper care and rest at home." Both turned to look at Haley, who straightened in her chair. "I can take care of her," she said without hesitation. "Haley, you don't have to," I began. "Yes, I do," she interrupted. "Because apparently no one else will." After reviewing care instructions and signing numerous forms, Haley helped me change into the clothes Allison had brought earlier. The simple act of dressing exhausted me, confirming Dr. Peterson's assessment more effectively than any medical test. As we waited for the discharge paperwork, an uncomfortable silence stretched between us. I finally reached Mom again, Haley said eventually, scrolling through her phone. Told her we were leaving the hospital and that you'd be staying with me for a few days. She said they'd call tomorrow to check in. Thank you for coming, I said quietly. I know we haven't been close, and this is a lot to ask. Haley looked up, her expression unreadable. Why did you call me, Brooke? After all this time. The question caught me off guard. The hospital needed family, and Mom and Dad weren't answering. So I was your last resort. No, that's not. I stopped, realizing it was exactly what had happened. I'm sorry. To my surprise, Haley laughed, though the sound held little humor. At least you're honest. That's more than our parents ever managed. What do you mean? She studied me for a long moment. You really don't see it, do you? All these years, you've been their golden child, their success story. The daughter who fulfilled all their ambitions. That's not fair, I protested. I worked hard for everything I've achieved. I'm not saying you didn't. But did you ever wonder why I left? Why I chose a college 3,000 miles away? Why I changed my phone number twice and only give them my new address when absolutely necessary? Before I could answer, a memory surfaced, Haley's high school graduation 5 years ago. Our parents had arrived late, missing her art award presentation because Dad had an unmissable client meeting. I remembered Haley's face, the forced smile as they brushed off her achievement, then spent the reception bragging to other parents about my recent promotion. They missed your college graduation, I realized aloud, the memory suddenly clear. You invited them to California, and they said they couldn't make it because of Mom's charity board meeting. That's right, Haley confirmed. The same week they flew to New York to attend your marketing award dinner. The implications of what she was saying began to sink in. All the times our parents had praised my achievements, had they been using them as weapons against my sister? After you left for college, I became the sole focus of their disappointment, Haley continued. Every call, every holiday, every family dinner was an opportunity to remind me how I wasn't measuring up to the Brooke Mitchell standard. Your sister made partner by 27. What are you doing with your art degree? Your sister bought a condo in the Gold Coast neighborhood and you're still renting with roommates? Shame washed over me. I had been so focused on my own relationship with our parents, on earning their approval, that I'd never considered how their treatment affected Haley. Did you know they didn't help me with college at all? She asked, her voice steady despite the painful revelation. They paid every penny of Northwestern for you, but when I chose art school, they decided I needed to learn financial responsibility. I'm still paying off student loans while working 3 jobs to make rent. I didn't know, I whispered, genuinely shocked. Our parents had always presented themselves as generous, supportive figures. The idea that they would withhold financial support from one child while lavishing it on another was disturbing. Of course you didn't. They made sure of that. It would ruin their perfect family narrative if their daughters actually talked to each other. A nurse entered with my discharge paperwork, temporarily halting our conversation. As I signed the forms with shaking hands, Dr. Peterson returned for final instructions. I cannot stress enough how serious your condition is, he said, handing me prescriptions for blood pressure medication and a referral to a cardiologist. Your body has been sending warning signals that you've ignored for too long. Without significant changes, you're at risk for stroke, heart attack, or worse. The gravity of his words finally penetrated the wall of denial I'd built. This wasn't something I could power through with determination and extra hours at the office. This was my body literally shutting down in protest of the life I'd been living. I understand, I said, and for the first time, I truly did. As Haley helped me into her battered Toyota, a stark contrast to my leased BMW, I felt a strange mix of vulnerability and relief. For years, I'd prided myself on never needing help, on being completely self-sufficient. Now, I was entirely dependent on the sister I'd all but abandoned. Thank you, I said again as she navigated through evening traffic. I know this isn't how either of us planned to spend our weekend. Haley glanced at me, her expression softening slightly. You know what's messed up? This is the longest conversation we've had in years, and it took you collapsing to make it happen. A startling realization hit me. She was right. Somewhere between chasing our parents' approval and climbing the corporate ladder, I'd lost not only my health, but also my relationship with the one person who had come when I truly needed someone. I'd like to change that, I said quietly. If you'll let me. Haley didn't respond immediately, her focus on the road ahead. But as we stopped at a red light, she reached over and briefly squeezed my hand, the first gesture of genuine connection between us in years. Let's start with getting you healthy, she said finally. Then we can work on everything else. Haley's apartment was nothing like my sleek downtown condo. Located in Wicker Park, the converted industrial space featured exposed brick walls, mismatched vintage furniture, and an explosion of color and creativity. Art covered every available surface, some framed professionally, others simply pinned to the walls. Plants thrived in macrame hangers and hand-painted pots, giving the space a lush, lived-in feel. It's not much, Haley said, suddenly self-conscious as she helped me through the door. But the couch pulls out into a pretty comfortable bed. It's wonderful, I replied, and surprised myself by meaning it. Despite its modest size and eclectic furnishings, her apartment felt more like a home than my expensive condo ever had. You can have my room, she offered. I'll take the couch. Absolutely not. I've already imposed enough. I sank onto the couch, already exhausted from the short walk from her car. Fine, but I'm warning you, my roommate's cat considers the couch his personal domain. Percy is very particular about his sleeping arrangements. As if summoned, an enormous orange tabby emerged from another room, regarding me with suspicious yellow eyes. Don't take it personally if he ignores you, Haley advised, setting my small overnight bag beside the couch. He's not big on strangers. To both our surprise, Percy approached cautiously, sniffed my hand, and then jumped onto the couch beside me, pressing his warm body against my leg. Well, that's unexpected, Haley remarked. Percy's usually a better judge of character. The joke landed awkwardly between us, highlighting the distance that had grown over years of estrangement. Where's your roommate? I asked, desperate to change the subject. Grace is visiting her parents in Milwaukee this weekend. Lucky timing. Haley disappeared into the kitchen. Are you hungry? Doctor's orders say you need to eat something with your medication. My phone buzzed incessantly in my pocket, work emails, texts from colleagues, a voicemail from Curtis. The outside world demanding my attention as always. I pulled it out, the screen illuminating with notifications. Don't even think about it, Haley warned, returning with a glass of water and a sandwich. She plucked the phone from my hand. Doctor said stress reduction. That thing is basically a portable stress factory. I need to at least let people know I'm okay, I protested weakly. Your friend Allison already handled that. She texted me earlier. Haley handed me the water and medication. What you need is rest, not work emails. Too tired to argue, I took the pills and nibbled at the sandwich. Haley pulled a worn armchair closer to the couch and sat, studying me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. So, she said finally. Senior account executive by 29. Mom and Dad must be thrilled. The comment stung more than it should have. I earned that position. I never said you didn't. She picked at a loose thread on the chair's upholstery. But I bet they love telling their country club friends about it. An uncomfortable silence settled between us, broken only by Percy's rumbling purr. Desperate to change the subject, I gestured to the artwork surrounding us. Are these all yours? Haley's expression softened slightly. Some of them. The ones by the window are Grace's, she's into sculpture and mixed media. The photographs are from friends at the gallery where I work. I studied a particularly striking canvas near the kitchen, bold colors swirling around a central figure that seemed simultaneously confined and breaking free. That one's mine, Haley admitted, following my gaze. From my Corporate Exodus series. It's beautiful, I said truthfully. I had no idea you were so talented. She shrugged, but I could see the pride in her eyes. It's how I process things. Not everyone gets it, but the right people do. The contrast between her world and mine struck me forcefully. While I chased promotions and client acquisitions, Haley had built a life filled with creativity, authentic connections, and seemingly genuine contentment. My phone buzzed again in Haley's hand. She glanced at the screen. Curtis Fleming, calling for the third time. Must be important. Reflexively, I reached for it, but Haley held it just out of reach. Before I give this back, ask yourself if talking to him right now will help your recovery or set it back. I hesitated, torn between ingrained responsibility and newfound awareness of my limits. He's probably just checking on me. Haley raised a skeptical eyebrow but handed over the phone. I answered on the final ring. Brooke, finally, Curtis barked, not bothering with pleasantries. What's the status on the Hartman presentation? No question about my health. No concern for my well-being. Just immediate demands for work. I'm out of the hospital, but the doctor says I need complete rest for at least a week, I explained, watching Haley's expression darken as she overheard his priorities. A week? That's not possible. The Hartman deadline is Wednesday. Jessica can email you the notes from yesterday, and you can finish from home. Curtis, I literally collapsed from exhaustion. The doctor mentioned risk of stroke and heart problems. We're all under pressure, Brooke. That's the nature of our industry. I need those slides by Monday morning. In the background, I heard someone call his name. Look, I've got to go. We'll expect your revised presentation in my inbox by 9 a.m. Monday. Glad you're feeling better. He hung up before I could respond. I stared at the phone in disbelief, tears of frustration burning behind my eyes. Let me guess, Haley said. He wants you working again immediately. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. And you're actually considering it, aren't you? Her voice held no judgment, only a sad resignation. Before I could answer, my phone rang again, our mother's ringtone. Haley and I exchanged glances. Should I give you privacy? She asked. No, I decided. Stay. I answered on speakerphone. Mom? Hi. Brooke, darling, finally. Your father and I were so worried when we got your messages. How are you feeling? Karen Mitchell's polished voice filled the room. I'm okay. The doctor says I need complete rest for at least a week. I had some serious cardiac symptoms from overwork and stress. Well, everyone gets overworked sometimes, dear. I'm sure it's not as serious as they're making it sound. Hospitals always dramatize these things. Haley rolled her eyes so hard I thought she might strain something. Actually, Mom, it is serious. They were concerned about potential heart damage. Heart damage? At your age? That seems excessive. Did you get a second opinion? The familiar pattern of dismissal and doubt made my chest tighten. Beside me, Haley was visibly tense, her fingers gripping the armchair. The doctor was very clear about the risks, I insisted. I need to make some significant lifestyle changes. Well, you can't just abandon your responsibilities, Brooke. Your position at Apex is something you've worked so hard for. What will people think if you suddenly step back? There it was, her real concern. Not my health, but appearances. I don't care what people think, Mom. I care about not having a heart attack before I'm 30. A beat of silence. There's no need for dramatics. Your father and I will stop by tomorrow to discuss this rationally. Where exactly is your sister's apartment? Haley shook her head vehemently. Actually, Mom, tomorrow isn't good. I need to rest. Brooke Mitchell, we are your parents. We're coming to see whether your sister likes it or not. Now, what's the address? I looked at Haley, torn between lifelong obedience and newfound awareness. Her expression was clear. This is your choice. I'll text you when I'm feeling better, I said finally. Right now, I need to follow doctor's orders and rest. I see. My mother's voice cooled several degrees. Your sister has always been a bad influence. One day with her and you're already being difficult. Anger flared unexpectedly. This isn't about Haley. This is about me nearly working myself to death trying to live up to impossible standards. I'm not going to engage when you're being emotional. We'll talk tomorrow when you're thinking more clearly. Give Haley our regards. The line went dead. I looked up to find Haley watching me with a strange mix of surprise and something that might have been respect. That's the first time I've ever heard you stand up to her, she said quietly. The realization hit me with surprising force. I think it might be the first time I ever have. That night, as I lay on Haley's pull-out couch, Percy curled against my side, I scrolled through my work emails one last time before surrendering to exhaustion. Among the perfunctory "get well soon" messages from colleagues, one from Allison stood out. "Talked to Curtis today after you left. He expected you to dial into the client call from the hospital." When I pointed out how insane that was, he said, "Brooke understands commitment. That's why she's successful." Is this really the life you want, working for someone who sees your health crisis as an inconvenience? Call me when you can. Worried about you. Love, Ollie. I set the phone down, suddenly seeing my successful life through new eyes. The prestigious job that was slowly killing me. The boss who valued my output over my survival. The parents who cared more about appearances than my well-being. And contrasting sharply with all of it, my estranged sister, who had dropped everything to come when I needed help, who had opened her home to me without hesitation, despite years of distance I'd helped create. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I fell asleep without setting an alarm, without a to-do list running through my mind, without the weight of imminent deadlines pressing down on me. And somehow, that felt like the first real success I'd experienced in years. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through windows much larger than those in my condo, and the unfamiliar weight of Percy still curled against my side. For a disorienting moment, I couldn't remember where I was or why my chest felt so tight. Then reality crashed back. The collapse, the hospital, Haley's apartment. The smell of coffee drew me to the kitchen, where I found my sister at a small table covered in sketches, her purple-tipped hair pulled into a messy bun. She looked up as I entered, pushing a mug toward me. "You're supposed to limit caffeine, but the doctor said 1 cup a day is okay. Thanks." I sank into the chair opposite her, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. "What time is it?" "Almost 11. She studied me over the rim of her own cup. "You slept for 14 hours. "What?" I fumbled for my phone, a surge of panic rising. "I never sleep past 6. "I've missed." "Nothing," Haley interrupted firmly. "You've missed absolutely nothing that can't wait." The sharp retort I would have normally fired back died on my lips. She was right, though the realization felt foreign and uncomfortable, like new shoes that hadn't yet molded to my feet. "Sorry," I mumbled. "Habit." Haley's expression softened. "I get it. Decompressing from that lifestyle isn't easy." She gestured to the sketches before her. "This is how I manage stress." "What do you do to relax?" The question caught me off guard. I go to the gym sometimes. For enjoyment or because it's efficient exercise? I couldn't answer. When had I last done anything purely for enjoyment? The silence was broken by a sharp knock at the door. Haley and I exchanged glances. "Expecting anyone?" I asked. "No." She rose, crossing to the door and peering through the peephole. Her shoulders immediately tensed. "It's Mom and Dad." Despite my explicit request for space, they had tracked us down, likely by calling my assistant at Apex. Typical. Boundaries had never been their strong suit, especially when those boundaries interfered with their agenda. "We don't have to let them in," Haley said, her hand resting on the door lock. The old Brooke, the people-pleasing, parent-appeasing Brooke, would have immediately dismissed this suggestion as disrespectful. But something had shifted in me since my collapse, a small seed of rebellion taking root. Before I could decide, my father's voice boomed through the door. "Haley, we know you're in there. Open the door. We need to see Brooke." Haley looked to me, the decision clearly mine. With a resigned nod, I gave her permission. Karen and Philip Mitchell entered the apartment like inspectors entering a questionable establishment, their designer clothes and perfect posture conspicuously out of place among Haley's eclectic furnishings. My mother immediately zeroed in on me, her practiced smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Darling, you look terrible," she announced, crossing to the couch and perching on its edge as if afraid it might soil her tailored suit. "We came as soon as we could." "After the gala, you mean?" Haley muttered, closing the door with more force than necessary. My father shot her a warning look before turning to me. "Your mother and I are concerned about the decisions you're making. Allison told your assistant you might need a leave of absence from Apex." Of course that was their concern, not my health, but my career trajectory. "The doctor was very clear," I explained, keeping my voice steady. "I need complete rest and stress reduction." Working right now could cause permanent damage. Doctors exaggerate, my father dismissed. Remember when they told your cousin Patrick he needed surgery for that sports injury? He got a second opinion and was back on the field in 2 weeks. This isn't a sports injury, Dad. My heart is showing abnormal rhythms because I've been working 18-hour days and surviving on coffee and adrenaline. We understand you need some rest, my mother interjected, her tone patronizing. But staying in this place, she gestured vaguely around Haley's apartment, and abandoning your responsibilities isn't the answer. What exactly is wrong with this place? Haley challenged, crossing her arms. My mother's smile tightened. It's lovely for your bohemian lifestyle, dear. But Brooke needs proper care, not she eyed a stack of art supplies on a nearby shelf. Distractions. Those distractions are my livelihood, Haley replied, her voice dangerously calm. And Brooke is getting exactly what she needs here, rest and freedom from toxic expectations. Toxic? My father's eyebrows shot up. We've given you girls every advantage. Paid for the best schools, provided every opportunity. You paid for Brooke's education, Haley corrected. You left me to figure it out on my own because I didn't choose the path you approved of. We taught you responsibility, he countered. Something you clearly still need lessons in. Stop it, I interrupted, a wave of dizziness washing over me as my blood pressure responded to the tension. This isn't helping anything. My mother noticed my pallor and adjusted her approach. Sweetheart, we're just concerned. You've worked so hard to build your career. Curtis called us, very worried about the Hartman account. The revelation that my boss had contacted my parents behind my back was the first genuine shock. Curtis called you? Of course he did. He knows how invested we are in your success. He said you're at a critical juncture with this client. Walking away now could damage your reputation permanently. The room seemed to tilt slightly as understanding dawned. The dots connected in a pattern I should have seen years ago. My parents and Curtis, united in their expectation that I sacrifice everything, including my health, at the altar of professional achievement and appearance. My reputation, I repeated slowly. That's what you're worried about. Not the fact that I collapsed in a meeting. Not that doctors warned me about potential heart damage. My reputation. Don't be dramatic, Brooke, my father said dismissively. Everyone has health scares. The difference between success and mediocrity is pushing through difficulties. Beside me, Haley made a sound of pure disgust. Do you even hear yourselves? Your daughter is telling you she could have permanent heart damage, and you're calling her dramatic. Stay out of this, Haley, my father warned. This is exactly why we didn't want Brooke staying with you. Your influence has always been. What? Haley challenged. Honest? Supportive? Not obsessed with status and appearances. Unsuccessful, he finished coldly. You've always resented your sister's achievements because you lack the discipline and commitment to create your own. The cruelty of his assessment hung in the air like poison. Even my mother looked taken aback by its nakedness. Philip, she murmured, placing a restraining hand on his arm. Too late. The damage was done. Haley's face had gone pale, then flushed with anger. Get out, she said quietly. Excuse me, my father demanded. Get out of my home. Now. Her voice remained level, but carried an unmistakable steel I'd never heard before. You don't get to come in here and insult me while pretending to care about Brooke. My mother rose, smoothing her skirt. We're not leaving without Brooke. She needs proper care, not whatever alternative lifestyle experiment you're running here. The room began to spin slightly as my heart raced in response to the confrontation. A sharp pain shot through my chest, and I gasped, clutching at the front of my shirt. Brooke? Haley was instantly at my side, her anger momentarily forgotten. What's wrong? Chest pain, I managed, trying to control my breathing as Dr. Peterson had instructed. It's the stress. See what you've done, my mother accused Haley. This environment is making her worse. I'm not the one causing her stress right now, Haley shot back, her arm protectively around my shoulders. You need to leave. She needs calm. This is ridiculous, my father declared. Brooke, get your things. We're taking you to your condo where you can recover properly. Your mother will stay with you until you're better. The offer might have tempted me once, the path of least resistance, returning to my familiar life and the comfort of parental approval. But something had fundamentally shifted. The chest pain subsided slightly as I made my decision. "No," I said simply. "No," my father repeated, as if the word made no sense. "I'm staying here with Haley." My mother's carefully maintained composure cracked. "This is absurd. You have responsibilities, Brooke. A career. A reputation to maintain. You can't throw everything away because of one health scare." "I'm not throwing anything away," I replied, finding strength in the clarity of my decision. "I'm choosing my life over my job for once. If you do this," my father warned, "there will be consequences. The connections we've built for you, the doors we've opened. Were they ever really for me?" I asked quietly. "Or were they for you? For the story you could tell at country club dinners about your successful daughter?" His expression confirmed what I'd begun to suspect. My achievements had never truly been mine in their eyes. They were extensions of themselves, carefully cultivated status symbols to be trotted out when socially advantageous. "We've given you everything," my mother said, her voice brittle. "Everything. And this is how you repay us." "You've given me conditions," I corrected. "Expectations. Approval that was always contingent on performance. What you haven't given me is what Haley offered without hesitation, support without strings attached." My father's face hardened. "If you stay here, if you take this leave of absence and damage your career, don't expect us to help you recover from the fallout. Our support isn't unconditional, Brooke. It never has been." At least he was finally being honest. The revelation should have devastated me, but instead, it felt like the removal of shackles I hadn't fully acknowledged were there. "I know," I said simply. "It never has been. For either of us." My parents exchanged glances, realizing they had lost control of the narrative and of me. Without another word, my father turned and walked to the door. My mother hesitated, conflicted, before following him. At the threshold, she paused. "When you come to your senses, call us." And then they were gone, the door closing behind them with a quiet finality. The silence that followed was broken only by Percy's soft meow as he jumped onto the couch beside me. Haley remained where she was, her arms still around my shoulders. "Are you okay?" she asked finally. "My chest hurts," I admitted. "But I think for the first time in years, my heart might be starting to heal." She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "Good. Because from where I'm standing, that's the only part that matters." 2 weeks after the confrontation with our parents, I remained at Haley's apartment, sleeping on the pull-out couch that had become surprisingly comfortable. Each day brought small improvements in my physical health, fewer chest pains, lower blood pressure readings, longer periods of energy before fatigue set in. But the psychological transformation was even more profound. On a rainy Tuesday morning, Haley sat cross-legged on the floor sorting through a box of old photographs while I leafed through a novel, the first book I'd read for pleasure in years. "Oh my God," she laughed, holding up a faded picture. "Remember this?" I leaned forward to see a much younger version of ourselves, me around 12, Haley about 7, covered in mud after an unsuccessful attempt to build a dam in the creek behind our childhood home. Mom was furious, I recalled, smiling at the memory. We tracked mud all through the house right before her garden club meeting. "Worth it though," Haley said. "That was the best day. You were so much fun before." She trailed off, but I knew what she meant. Before I became obsessed with achievements and parental approval. Before I traded authentic joy for accolades. "I miss that version of me," I admitted quietly. "She's still in there somewhere." Haley shuffled through more photos. "Remember that summer you were obsessed with photography? You were really good." The memory surfaced slowly. The used Nikon camera I'd saved my allowance to buy, the hours spent photographing everything from insects to sunsets. I'd forgotten that passion entirely. "Whatever happened to that camera?" Haley asked. "I put it away when I started SAT prep. Dad said hobbies wouldn't get me into Northwestern." A familiar chime interrupted our conversation, my work email notification. I'd been avoiding checking it regularly, following doctor's orders to minimize stress, but the sound still triggered an automatic response. "Do you need to get that?" Haley asked. Probably just Curtis again, I sighed. He's been sending increasingly desperate emails about the Hartman account. Let me see. She grabbed my phone before I could protest and scrolled through my emails. Oh, this one's not from Curtis. It's from HR. My stomach dropped. What does it say? Haley's expression grew serious as she read. Dear Ms. Mitchell, as you have exhausted your available personal days and have not provided adequate documentation for extended medical leave, Apex Marketing has no choice but to terminate your employment effective immediately. Please coordinate with security to retrieve your personal belongings. She looked up, her eyes wide. Brooke, they fired you. Strangely, my first reaction wasn't panic but relief, a weightless sensation as if a burden I'd carried for years had suddenly been lifted. Then reality crashed back. They fired me, I repeated, the implications slowly sinking in. I don't have a job. Those absolute bastards, Haley fumed. You literally collapsed in their office. What more documentation do they need? The practical concerns began flooding in: mortgage payments on my expensive condo, car lease, student loans, health insurance. I'd been so focused on recovery that I hadn't considered the financial ramifications of an extended absence from work. I need to call Allison, I said, reaching for my phone. Allison answered on the second ring. I was just about to call you, she said, her voice tight with anger. Did you get the email? Just now. What happened? I sent them the doctor's note. Curtis happened, she replied. He's been on a rampage since you left. Claimed your absence cost us the Hartman account, though that's complete bull. The client actually asked about you and seemed concerned when they heard you'd collapsed. So he fired me out of spite? Essentially. He made it look procedural by going through HR, but everyone knows he pushed for it. She paused. I handed in my resignation this morning. Allison, no, I protested. You can't quit because of me. Not because of you, she corrected. Because I don't want to work for someone who treats people like disposable resources. Life's too short, Brooke. Your collapse made me realize that. After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence, trying to process the abrupt end to the career I'd sacrificed everything to build. Are you okay? Haley asked cautiously. I don't know, I answered honestly. I should be devastated, but I think I might be relieved. That makes perfect sense to me, she said. That job was killing you. Literally. But what am I supposed to do now? The question encompassed far more than employment. It was about identity, purpose, the entire framework I'd built my adult life around. Whatever you want, Haley replied simply. For the first time, you get to decide based on what you actually want, not what Mom and Dad or Curtis or anyone else expects. The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. I don't even know what I want. Then you get to figure it out. She squeezed my hand. And you don't have to do it alone. Over the next week, I faced hard realities and made harder decisions. My financial advisor confirmed what I already suspected: maintaining my current lifestyle without income was impossible. My savings would cover expenses for 3 months at most. After reviewing my options, I made the difficult choice to sell my condo and my leased BMW. The real estate market in Chicago was strong, and my Gold Coast properties sold quickly, providing a financial cushion that relieved the immediate pressure to find employment. You can stay here as long as you need, Haley offered when I told her my plans. Grace and I have the spare room now that her brother moved out. It's tiny, but it's yours if you want it. The generosity of her offer brought unexpected tears to my eyes. I don't deserve your kindness after the way I've treated you. That's not how family is supposed to work, she said simply. We help each other. No scorecard. With my basic needs secured, I focused on my health and began the process of rediscovering myself beyond work. Haley introduced me to her eclectic circle of friends, artists, writers, teachers, and nonprofit workers who define success very differently than the corporate world I'd inhabited. Among them was Ryan, a former corporate attorney who had left a prestigious firm to work for a legal aid organization. His story resonated deeply with my current situation. Everyone thought I was having a breakdown when I quit. He told me over coffee at Haley's favorite neighborhood cafe. My parents still introduce me as our son who used to be a lawyer at Marshall and Reed. How did you know it was the right decision? I asked. I started asking myself if I'd be happy with my life if it ended tomorrow, he replied. The honest answer was no. So I changed it. His perspective shifted something in me. The health crisis that had seemed like the end of everything was actually offering a rare opportunity, the chance to rebuild my life intentionally, based on authentic values rather than external expectations. I began exploring long-abandoned interests, digging out my old photography passion, taking a creative writing class at the local community center, volunteering at an animal shelter where I found unexpected joy in the simple act of walking dogs. My follow-up appointment with Dr. Peterson brought encouraging news. My blood pressure had stabilized, the irregular heart rhythms had significantly decreased, and the stress cardiomyopathy was showing signs of reversal. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it, he advised. Your body is healing remarkably well. I sold my condo, quit my toxic job, and moved in with my sister, I told him with a small laugh. Not exactly conventional treatment. Sometimes the best medicine isn't medicine at all, he replied. It's removing yourself from the environment that made you sick in the first place. As my health improved, I began considering what meaningful work might look like in this new phase of life. The corporate marketing world had left me burned out, but I still enjoyed the creative aspects of the profession. After updating my resume to reflect my new priorities, I began selectively applying to smaller agencies with reputations for work-life balance. One particularly promising interview was with Harper Creative, a boutique agency specializing in nonprofit and socially responsible business marketing. The creative director, Tessa, had a refreshingly different approach to the interview. I see you were at Apex, she noted, reviewing my resume. Impressive credentials, but I have to ask. Why leave such a prestigious position? I considered giving the sanitized version I'd prepared, but opted for honesty instead. I collapsed during a client presentation due to extreme overwork and stress. It was a wake-up call that forced me to reevaluate my priorities. Rather than the awkward response I expected, Tessa nodded appreciatively. Thank you for your candor. We actually formed Harper Creative after several of us burned out at larger agencies. Work-life balance isn't just a buzzword here. It's foundational to our business model. The position offered significantly less money than I'd made at Apex, but included reasonable hours, creative freedom, and the opportunity to work with clients whose values aligned with my emerging sense of purpose. When they extended an offer, I accepted without hesitation. Alongside professional changes, I was slowly rebuilding my relationship with Haley. Late-night conversations on the couch gradually bridged the years of distance between us. I learned about her struggles and triumphs, her art career, and the chosen family she'd built when our biological one had failed her. I used to be so jealous of you, she confessed one evening as we shared a bottle of wine. Not of your job or your condo, but of how easily you seemed to win their approval. There was nothing easy about it, I replied. I was constantly terrified of disappointing them, of being a failure in their eyes. And now? I considered the question carefully. Now I'm learning that their definition of failure might actually be the path to a better life. Our parents had made several attempts to re-establish contact, but their messages remained focused on their disappointment in my impulsive decisions rather than concern for my well-being. With Haley's support, I maintained firm boundaries, limiting communication to brief, factual updates about my health. The distance was painful but necessary. For perhaps the first time, I was making choices based on what I needed rather than what would please them. As the weeks passed, my new room at Haley's apartment transformed from a temporary shelter to a genuine home. The walls, once bare, now displayed photographs I'd taken during neighborhood walks and art pieces Haley had given me. Percy the cat had claimed permanent residence on my bed, his rumbling purr a soothing soundtrack to my evolving life. I'd even begun dating someone, Gabriel, a graphic designer I'd met through Haley's circle. Unlike my previous relationships based primarily on networking potential, our connection was refreshingly genuine. He valued conversation over status, creativity over credentials, and seemed entirely unimpressed by my former corporate title. One evening, as we returned from dinner at a neighborhood bistro, Gabriel nodded toward my camera. You've got a good eye. Have you ever thought about doing anything with your photography? Not really, I admitted. It's just a hobby. Some hobbies become passions, and some passions become vocations, he replied. The lines aren't as fixed as we're taught to believe. His observation lingered with me long after he'd gone home. For so many years, I'd compartmentalized my life. Work separate from pleasure, achievement separate from joy, public success separate from private fulfillment. Now those artificial boundaries were dissolving, creating space for a more integrated, authentic existence. As I prepared for my first day at Harper Creative, I found myself filled not with the anxious ambition that had driven me at Apex, but with a quiet excitement about contributing meaningful work to causes I believed in. Nervous? Haley asked, leaning against my doorframe as I deliberated between two much more casual outfits than I'd ever worn to Apex. Surprisingly, no, I replied, realizing it was true. For the first time in my career, I feel like I'm moving towards something positive instead of running from the fear of failure. She smiled. That, dear sister, is what growth looks like. The journey from collapse to reconstruction had been neither straight nor easy. There were still days of doubt, moments of panic about the future, occasional longing for the clear metrics of success I'd left behind. But beneath these fluctuations ran a steady current of certainty that I was finally building a life worth living, not just a resume worth reading. My collapse hadn't been the end I'd feared, but rather the beginning I'd needed, a painful but necessary rupture that allowed something authentic to finally take root and grow. 6 months after my collapse in the Apex conference room, I stood in the kitchen of what was now officially my home, the apartment I shared with Haley and Grace. Morning sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating a space that had transformed alongside me. The spare room I'd initially occupied temporarily was now permanently mine, decorated with a blend of salvaged items from my old condo and new pieces that better reflected my evolving identity. My life had undergone a complete renovation, dismantled to the foundation and rebuilt with more sustainable materials. The corner office with its prestigious view had been replaced by a modest desk at Harper Creative, where I now worked as a senior content strategist focusing on campaigns for environmental nonprofits and ethical businesses. My 60-hour workweeks had given way to a reasonable schedule that left time for photography classes, volunteering, and actual human connections. Morning, Haley yawned, padding into the kitchen in mismatched socks. Ready for your 6-month heart checkup today? As ready as I'll ever be, I replied, sliding a mug of tea toward her. Dr. Peterson sounded optimistic at the last appointment. Of course he did. You're practically a medical miracle. She hopped onto a counterstool. From corporate zombie to functioning human in record time. I laughed, the sound still somewhat unfamiliar but increasingly natural. Laughter had become more common in my daily life, along with other emotions I'd previously suppressed in the name of professional composure. Speaking of functioning humans, Haley continued, Mom called my cell yesterday while you were at work. My hand stilled around my own mug. Contact with our parents had been minimal since the confrontation, limited to occasional terse text messages and one uncomfortable phone call on my birthday. What did she want? The usual passive-aggressive check-in. Asked how you were doing in that tone that suggests she's expecting to hear you failed spectacularly and are ready to admit they were right. And what did you tell her? That you're thriving, much to her poorly concealed disappointment. Haley sipped her tea. She mentioned Dad's retirement party next month. Said we're both welcome to attend if we're ready to be reasonable. The old Brooke would have immediately adjusted her schedule to accommodate this command disguised as an invitation. The new Brooke considered her actual feelings about the prospect. I'm not sure I'm ready for that level of interaction, I admitted. Every conversation still feels like navigating a minefield. Then don't go, Haley shrugged. That's the beautiful thing about being an adult with boundaries. You get to choose your social obligations. The concept of choice had become central to my recovery. Each day brought opportunities to practice discernment rather than defaulting to people-pleasing or status-seeking. Sometimes I chose well, other times I slipped into old patterns, but the awareness itself represented progress. After breakfast, I walked to the nearby clinic for my 6-month cardiac evaluation. The medical center was just 10 blocks from our apartment, a pleasant stroll through a neighborhood I'd grown to love. I recognized the barista at the corner coffee shop, the elderly man who walked his corgi every morning, the librarian heading to the branch that had become my weekend sanctuary. These small connections had once seemed inconsequential compared to networking with potential clients, but now they formed the rich texture of a life actually being lived rather than merely performed. Dr. Peterson greeted me with genuine warmth. "Brooke, good to see you. You're looking well." The comprehensive examination included blood work, an EKG, and a stress test. As I waited for the results, I reflected on how different this medical appointment felt from those I'd routinely canceled in my previous life. Health had become a priority rather than an inconvenience. "The results are quite remarkable," Dr. Peterson announced, returning with my file. "Your blood pressure has normalized, heart rhythm is regular, and the stress cardiomyopathy has completely resolved. Physically, you've made a full recovery." Relief flooded through me. "So I'm officially healthy?" "Your cardiac health is excellent," he confirmed. "How are you feeling otherwise? Still experiencing stress or anxiety?" "Sometimes," I answered honestly, "especially when I'm making decisions that go against my conditioning. But it's manageable now, not overwhelming." He nodded approvingly. "That's normal. Rewiring neural pathways takes time. The important thing is you're developing healthier responses to stress." As I left the clinic with my clean bill of health, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the body that had forcefully demanded attention when I'd been determined to ignore its needs. The collapse that had seemed like the ultimate failure had actually been the ultimate intervention. That evening, Gabriel came over to celebrate my medical milestone. The three of us, Haley, Gabriel, and I, prepared dinner together in the small but functional kitchen, moving around each other with the easy familiarity that develops among people who genuinely enjoy one another's company. To Brooke's clean bill of health, Gabriel proposed a toast once we were seated. And to second chances at getting life right. "I'll drink to that," Haley agreed, clinking her glass against mine. As dinner progressed, the conversation turned to an upcoming art exhibition where both Haley and Gabriel would be showing work. I'd been documenting the preparation process, my photography skills improving with consistent practice. "You should submit some of your photos," Gabriel suggested. "The theme is transformation. Your before and after series would be perfect." I hesitated. "I'm not a professional." "Neither was I when I submitted my first piece," Haley reminded me. "Art isn't about credentials, it's about having something to say." The idea both terrified and excited me, putting my work, my perspective, my vision out for public view without the shield of corporate branding or professional distance. It represented another step away from the carefully controlled image I'd maintained for so long. "I'll think about it," I promised, meaning it. After dinner, as Gabriel and Haley cleared the table, my phone buzzed with a text from Allison. She had landed at a smaller agency after leaving Apex and seemed genuinely happy with the change. "Heard Curtis got passed over for CEO position," her message read. Apparently, the board had concerns about toxic leadership style and retention issues. Karma's real. The news would have filled me with vindictive satisfaction 6 months ago. Now, it generated only a mild sense of cosmic justice and gratitude for my escape from that environment. Curtis's setback no longer affected my sense of worth or validation, perhaps the clearest sign of how far I'd come. Later, as Gabriel and I walked through the neighborhood enjoying the mild evening, he asked about my parents. "Haley mentioned they invited you to some retirement party?" "Invited is a generous interpretation," I sighed. It was more like a summons wrapped in a test of loyalty. "Are you going to go?" I considered the question, weighing obligation against self-preservation. "I don't think so. Not yet. We're still establishing boundaries, and a public event full of their friends isn't the right setting for that work." He nodded, lacing his fingers through mine. "It takes courage to maintain boundaries with family. Most people default to unhealthy patterns for the sake of peace. I spent 29 years doing exactly that," I admitted. "The price of peace was my authentic self." We paused at a small neighborhood park, sitting on a bench beneath flowering trees. The simple pleasure of being outdoors on a spring evening with nowhere else to be still felt like a luxury after years of working through sunset and beyond. "Do you ever regret it?" Gabriel asked. Leaving that whole life behind? The question deserved honest consideration. I thought about my spacious condo with its pristine furnishings, the prestigious business card, the admiration of colleagues, the parental approval that had briefly been mine when I achieved exactly what they'd programmed me to want. I missed certain aspects, I acknowledged. The financial security, the clear metrics of success, knowing exactly what was expected of me. But those benefits came at a cost I can only fully appreciate now that I'm not paying it anymore. What was the cost? He asked quietly. Everything that actually matters, I replied. My health, authentic relationships, creative fulfillment, the ability to recognize my own wants separate from external expectations. I smiled, the insight crystallizing as I spoke it. I had all the trappings of success, but none of the substance of a meaningful life. 6 months earlier, such an admission would have seemed like failure. Now it felt like the hard-won wisdom that only comes through difficult experience. When I returned home that night, I found Haley in her small studio space, working on a new piece, an abstract rendering of 2 intertwined figures emerging from a dark background into vibrant color. That's beautiful, I said, pausing in the doorway. It's us, she replied, not looking up from her canvas. At least, how I see us now. Emotion tightened my throat as I recognized the symbolism. 2 distinct individuals connected by shared experience, moving together from shadow into light. Thank you, I said simply, the words encompassing far more than appreciation for her art. For everything. She finally turned, brush still in hand. We saved each other, I think. I was carrying so much resentment before you called from that hospital. Taking care of you helped me let go of it. The observation struck me as profoundly true. My collapse had created the opportunity for mutual healing, for reconciliation that might never have happened if I'd continued on my previous path. We had both been damaged by the same dynamics, albeit in different ways. Me by striving relentlessly to meet impossible standards, Haley by being measured against my achievements and found wanting. Together, we'd begun the work of dismantling those patterns, supporting each other through the messy process of becoming more authentic versions of ourselves. The journey wasn't complete. I still struggled with perfectionism, with the deep-seated fear that I was only as valuable as my last accomplishment. Boundaries with our parents remained a work in progress, our relationship evolving in fits and starts towards something healthier, if more limited than before. But these ongoing challenges no longer felt like failures. They were simply part of the human experience of growth, of learning to live from the inside out rather than the outside in. My collapse at work hadn't been the catastrophic ending I'd initially perceived, but rather the necessary beginning of a more authentic life. The old structures, both external and internal, had needed to fall so that something truer could be built in their place. As I prepared for bed that night, I found myself reflecting on the strange path that had led me here. 6 months ago, I had been at the pinnacle of conventional success, senior executive position, luxury condo, designer wardrobe, parental approval, and utterly miserable, though I lacked the perspective to recognize it. Now, I had none of those external markers of achievement, yet I felt genuinely content in a way I never had before. Sometimes losing everything you thought you wanted is the only way to find what you truly need. My collapse wasn't the end of my story. It was finally the beginning of my real life. I wonder how many of you have experienced a wake-up call that forced you to reevaluate what truly matters? Have you ever had to choose between success as others define it and happiness as you experience it? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of healing and transformation. And remember, it's never too late to start prioritizing your well-being. Don't wait for a collapse to make the changes your heart is begging for. Thank you for listening, and take care of yourselves out there.